दोस्तों let's check the latest news update with Vishal.
Hello and welcome to Friends World TV. I'm your host, Vishal Venkatesh. Thank you for joining the weekly English news bulletin today. The news has been very intense and, of course, a lot has been going on in the last fortnight, especially this last week. Of course, we've got the US elections, coronavirus updates, and many, many more news bits, both in a local and national context. But let's get to the headlines as per usual. A man has been crushed underneath the car while working on it in Sydney's inner west. COVID-19 could disappear in Australia if New South Wales and Victoria maintain control over the next few weeks, according to experts. Scott Morrison thanks Mr. Trump and congratulates Joe Biden on his US election victory. Australian fruit-picking exploitation claims prompt an urgent push on protections against modern slavery. Kamala Harris is the first woman set to become the Vice President of the United States. Austria admits mistakes responding to intelligence on Vienna terrorist. Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announces airstrikes in the country's Tigray region. And famous Hollywood actor Johnny Depp has been removed from the Fantastic Beasts movie franchise after losing his libel defamation case against the Sun newspaper. Wagina Island residents win bid to stop a bauxite mining plan in the Solomon Islands region. And Facebook and Twitter purge a violent rhetoric as Philadelphia police make dozens and dozens of arrests over suspected plot to attack vote count. And the White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, has been diagnosed with coronavirus, according to inside sources. And the Brazilian president's son has been charged with commanding a criminal organization and laundering money during his time as an elected politician. And Jacinda Ardern appoints Grant Robertson as New Zealand's first openly gay man to Deputy PM vote. And Sri Lankans rescue over 100 whales stranded in the waters near the city of Colombo. And the US coronavirus cases climb by record for the second day in a row. But first, let's get to the inner west issue. A man has been unfortunately crushed underneath a car whilst working on it in Sydney's inner west. New South Wales police confirmed that emergency services were called to a Summerhill home just after 2 p.m. following reports a man was trapped beneath that car. A police spokesperson said that it was understood that a jack suspending the vehicle failed, and that was what essentially caused the car to fall on top of the man. 4 New South Wales ambulance crews and 1 helicopter, along with police and fire rescue trucks, were on the scene, and Gower Street was cordoned off as emergency crews worked to free the man. The man, who was aged in his mid-30s, sustained serious injuries to his head, neck, and also his upper body. Coronavirus could die out in Australia entirely if New South Wales and Victoria stay on their current trajectory of low infections, according to 2 leading epidemiologists. Victoria has had 7 days, that's a week, of 0 COVID cases, and the New South Wales Chief Health Officer said that COVID-19 may be eliminated in Sydney already. And data, however, has shown that when cases climb over 40 a day, contact tracers become swamped. Prime Minister Scott Morrison is thanking US President Donald Trump after his election defeat, while saying he looks forward to forging a great partnership with President-elect Joe Biden. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says his government will continue to work with the Trump administration, and Mr. Morrison will of course write a letter to Mr. Biden inviting him to Australia in the coming days. When asked about Mr. Trump's refusal to concede, Mr. Morrison said he had confidence in American democracy. Potential increased worker exploitation due to the COVID-19 pandemic has been categorized as modern slavery, prompting further calls for better protection for vulnerable workers. Flinders University Associate Professor of Law Marinella Marmo released a recent report into slavery and other practices like slavery in late 2019. She says that there have been cases of worker exploitation during the pandemic and has concerns that the issue has recently worsened. Amnesty International Australia says it has identified international students as vulnerable to this modern slavery scheme and it has especially increased during the COVID-19 phase. For the first time in US history, a woman has been elected to the executive branch of the US government. Kamala Harris, aged 56, has become the next vice president, with Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden, who is projected to win the US election. Ms. Harris will also become the second person of color to be elected either as president or vice president. Since the presidential office of the US was formed back in 1789, 92 men have held the position of either president or vice president. Of those, only Mr. Barack Obama was considered to be a person of color, and he was also male. Ms. Harris had been a senator from California since 2017. She had made an immediate impact on the US political scene, regularly questioning Donald Trump's cabinet appointees during confirmation hearings. Before that, Ms. Harris served as a district attorney for San Francisco and as California's Attorney General. Austrian intelligence officials were told in July the terrorist who this week fatally shot 4 people in Vienna had tried to buy ammunition in the country of Slovakia. Austria's interior minister had called for an inquiry into the handling of the intelligence on the gunman, and video footage shows Kuchim Fazoulier was the only shooter in the incident. The 20-year-old terrorist has already been convicted of trying to reach Syria and join the prominent Islamic State. Ethiopia's Air Force has bombed armed depots and destroyed lots and lots of military hardware in the country's well-armed Tigray region, according to the Prime Minister. He says that a war has escalated as he launched this week his former ruling coalition allies. Mr. Abiy said the airstrikes were actually necessary to disarm the TPLF, and the TPLF was Ethiopia's dominant political force until Mr. Abiy took office just 2 years ago. And aid groups warn a humanitarian disaster is in the making if the fighting continues. Famous Hollywood actor Johnny Depp has been forced outside of the Fantastic Beasts movie franchise, days after losing a libel case against a British tabloid that branded him as a wife-beater. Mr. Depp says that he has respected and agreed to Warner Brothers' request, and he has left the Fantastic Beasts franchise. And this week, Mr. Depp lost his libel case against the Sun newspaper, and J.K. Rowling has declined to comment on Depp's departure, but has previously defended his casting back in 2017. A remote community in the Solomon Islands has scored a huge victory against a mining company which had planned to dig an open-pit mine on their tiny island. Wagina Island has been fighting against planned bauxite mine for years. Development consent for the mine has been revoked, and appeal has failed. Most residents are descendants of refugees from islands thousands of kilometers away. Wagina Island is just 78 square kilometers in size, and residents argued that the open-pit bauxite mine company had been given approval, and this would consequently affect about 60% of the landmass, damaging the land, rivers, and also its seas, which is a tourist attraction. Facebook has removed a fast-growing group in which supporters of US President Donald Trump posted violent rhetoric as it and other companies tackle baseless claims and potential violence after a contentious election. The Stop the Steal group, which called for boots on the ground to protect the integrity of the vote, was adding 1,000 new members every 10 seconds and had grown to about 365,000 members approximately in a day. Facebook has officially said that it worries for calls of violence in the Stop the Steal group, and Philadelphia police are investigating an alleged plot to attack a vote-counting center. Twitter suspended former Trump advisor Steve Bannon over a call to murder Dr. Anthony Fauci. US President Donald Trump's chief of staff, Mark Meadows, has been diagnosed with COVID-19, sources have told Reuters and AP. Mark Meadows was last seen in public not wearing a mask, whilst Mr. Trump, the former president, falsely declared victory in the election. He accompanied Mr. Trump at rallies across the country during the final days of the campaign, which just wrapped up, and COVID-19 has killed more than 236,000 Americans so far this year. The Brazilian president's son has been charged with commanding a criminal organization and laundering money during his time as an elected politician. Flávio Bolsonaro and 16 others were charged on October the 19th, according to a statement from the Public Prosecutor's Office posted to its website on Wednesday. Prosecutors allege the senator had people on his government-funded payroll who were not required to work and who had to return part of their salaries to him. The senator denied having committed any crime and said he was confident that courts would not accept the charge, according to the message he posted on his verified Instagram account. The accusation is inviolable because it is devoid of any hint of proof. It's nothing more than a macabre and badly engineered tale, according to one of his 4 lawyers called Rodrigo Raca, who said this in a statement. Prosecutors say the alleged scam lasted between 2007 and to 2018. New Zealand's new Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson will be the country's first openly gay man to hold the role after being appointed as part of the country's new and improved leadership team. Mr. Robertson says he knows young people look to leadership roles for representation, and Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says the diversity cabinet was appointed on the basis of merit. The Labour Party has signed a cooperation agreement with the Green Party despite winning the majority of seats in the recent election, and Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced her new cabinet lineup after her Labour Party won re-election in a landslide victory just last month. Locals have helped rescue more than 100 whales stranded on a beach on Sri Lanka's southwest coast, according to the country's Navy. 4 whales died, according to a Navy spokesman, and villagers from the city of Panadura, south of the capital Colombo, defied a COVID-19 curfew to help rescue the whales on Monday local time, wading into breaking surf to push animals back into sea. And in regards to the US COVID-19 update, coronavirus cases in the country has surged at least 120,276 in the past 24 hours, according to Reuters tally, the second consecutive daily record rise as the outbreaks spread in every region. Yesterday, the country set a national record with nearly 105,000 new infections. The tally is expected to push even higher though when California's county-by-county data is added. And US cases have risen more than 100,000 for 3 out of the past 7 days, putting pressure on hospitals in several states such as Iowa and Michigan, and causing families to rethink their plans for Thanksgiving dinner on the 26th of November, which is not far away, of course. That's all the news for this week. Thank you for joining the weekly English News Bulletin. This is Vishal reporting for Friends All TV.